Let's see. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the AI Empowered Fundraiser Show. You are in the right place. Today, we're going to be talking with Sterrin Bird, who is, I swear, like my best friend slash sister slash colleague, work bestie, who I've never really gotten to know like one-to-one like this. So I guess now that I got to invite her on my show, she's here and you're going to watch us get to know each other a little bit better. Sterrin is a really well-known figure in our field, and you're going to enjoy hearing from her. For those of you who I don't know yet and who don't know me, my name is Ann Murphy. I'm the founder and CEO of Empowered Fundraiser Consulting and Coaching. Recently, we added a suite of AI services to what we do to support the nonprofit and higher ed sector. So we now are the AI Empowered Fundraiser Group. And what we do is we work with individuals, executive leaders, and enterprise level implementation of AI skills and AI governance. And we've even started doing some building for folks. So it's a wild west for sure in AI in general. And despite what people often like to say about the nonprofit sector, in my work so far, I can say there is no lag between what is happening in the nonprofit sector and what's happening in the private sector. And Sterrin and I will talk about that a little bit. Before I bring her on, I wanted to highlight a couple of different things. One is the QR code in the upper corner there for advanced AI writing. So I'm running this advanced AI writing intensive in November. So check that out. You just point your camera at it and it'll take you to a website. And then the other thing I wanted to share is that we are once again running our AI one of our AI boot camps. So Rachel Kimber, who was on our show on Friday, and I are hosting Fall Forward with AI. It's a boutique boot camp for nonprofit pros. And the way that we organize our learning, and we had so much fun with this in the summer, is we will start the group out with a fictional fundraising initiative. You could call it a campaign, it can be something smaller, it doesn't matter. We'll work together on this case study, and as we go, as we teach you each different approach strategy to using AI, it will all roll up to this campaign. So when you're done, you'll have artifacts, you'll have prompts that work really well, you'll have feedback from your fellow participants, and you'll have like a campaign that you could take and apply to your own organization. And that's launching, that is October 11th through 18th. So next month, and you can sign up at the QR code here or the bit.ly link here, which we will add to the chat as well. Okay, those are my announcements. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Let me bring up my new friend, Sterrin Bird. Will you tell us, I'm going to highlight some things about you, and then you tell me some other things about you, okay?
Okay, deal.
Started, your name is one of those names that just sort of is everywhere, right? It's like,
Oh
what
dear.
would Sterrin do? What would Sterrin do? No, it's in like such a positive way because you have um your leader coach approach that you take in your consulting work and in your work at Attain is kind of comes through everything you do. We know that you're one of us and you're also a thought leader, right? You're a fundraiser, you're also a technologist, you're a leader and you're a doer. And I think that makes you so relatable to so many different people and groups in our field that your name just comes up in all sorts of different conversations and it's always really positive. So you've done frontline fundraising, team building, you've run campaigns, large institutions, medium size. I don't know. Have you worked in small?
I have.
You've been at Salesforce and now you are the founder and CEO of Wingspan Philanthropy, where among other things you do fractional fundraising, correct?
Yes, I do.
You are the um, nonprofit executive in residence at Attain Partners. So talk to me, fill in some gaps. And we definitely want to hear about Jerry Garcia and his soon-to-be sister. And then gonna have a question for you about what you don't get to brag
So,
about.
so I guess first of all, thank you for the enormous compliments about my name coming up in places and being a trusted partner and a player coach. As I think about my journey in this work, I said to someone yesterday while I was at Dreamforce that I have woken up every day that I can remember, really back to about 13 or 14 years old, trying to figure out how to make the world a better place. It's just how I'm wired. And I moved into fundraising. It's all I've ever done. Spent 30 years in the industry as a chief development officer. And then, of course, as you said, for the most recently 4 years at Salesforce as their in house industry expert on the nonprofit sector as it relates to fundraising and engagement. And I feel the most important thing about the work that we do is that we continue to put the people at the center. And whether or not that's the people doing the work or the donors we're engaging with, at the end of the day, this is about people helping people. And that is something we are innately wired to do. That's what we want to do. And so the work of a fundraiser is to help people do what they already want to do. Now, I oversimplify that when I say it, but now, I have worked in this business. I think I said to you when we were talking pre show that my brain, because of how I grew up in this business, operates like a CRM because it had to.
Yeah.
I didn't have all of the tools and the tricks and all of the things that we can avail ourselves of now. And I think both are important. So I think training the muscle of our fundraisers to continue to understand why they do it and how to do it, and then use the tools in service of the human is the key to this.
Yeah.
And I think we have to continue to remind ourselves as the shiny marketing and all of the objects come at us to say, which piece of the human part of my work is this serving? And if we can keep coming back to center that way, I think we will not cast ourselves adrift in this sea of information that we're flooded with all day, every day. And so for me, this is my life's work. It's all I've ever done. It's all I will ever want to do. And my journey into it is I feel like I am only credible if I am actually doing it with you. So I grow weary, as many of you have seen me on LinkedIn saying, I grow weary of people who've had no nonprofit jobs at all, or maybe one, pontificating online about how to do this and talking at us about what it means to make fundraising more efficient like sales. Well, we can be more efficient. I don't dispute that, but I challenge the notion that we need to be told how to do this. I would like us as an industry to flip the script, to take that power back, and we need to tell the world how this work is done and then invite them to help us and take the power back. So that's my frame on this. So I want to be on the field. That's the consulting I do is it's with you along. I'll ride shotgun with you.
Yep.
Coach from behind, influence from the side, or I can lead from the front. It just really depends on what the organization needs. And one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah. I love what you're sharing about your brain working like a CRM because that's what it had to. I
Yeah.
remember Ward, I don't know, it's probably been like maybe 5 or maybe even 10 years. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I was about 10 years into being a major gift officer and got into a conversation with my therapist about who knows what or why, but she had explained to me that I needed to stop remembering the phone numbers of my donors because that's not healthy. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I was like, you don't understand. Like, it's not like I had to, like, you need to be able to call them, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't have, I mean, you were probably the same as me driving around with park phones. Like, that was like the big thing in my life when I was a development officer was I got to get a park phone. I'm like,
Oh, I used to
I,
have 4 file boxes in the trunk of my car with, like, dividers and the whole thing, and then I'd come home at night, and my rebalancing of my portfolio was on my living room floor with a ruler and paper.
so
I know, we're old. I try to pretend I'm getting younger.
we are. I think once you hit 50, you go backwards. I really
I
do.
know. I agree.
So much younger than I did when I was 40.
Yeah.
Not 30 even. 30 was the really tired years. So and the piece about, let's explain to folks how we actually do this work and then figure out how to support the work that we do. That really resonates with me. I often think about this is our moment to break what's already broken.
Yeah.
So much of what we do is broken already, but there are these, the grooves are worn in. It's the way we've always done things. And now we get this excuse, just like we did when we all went home during the pandemic, and all of a sudden, what do you
Right.
know? Turns out we can build relationships over Zoom. We said it could not be done. Period. End
Right.
of discussion. There's no possible way we can do that. Turns out you can. Turns
Yep.
out that fundraising can be done this way. And it would take something like that to disrupt this concept of this is the way we do it. We can do it
Right.
this way and we can't do it that way. And now we have this disruption to look at why are we doing things the way we're doing them. Have you come across any particularly um, poignant examples of how, by looking at how we're using AI in fundraising, it changed, it can change how we're doing something in general? How we've always, like whether it's,
Yeah, I can think of a
yeah,
great one.
let's hear
So,
it.
so back to our file boxes and my living room floor and the rulers. One of the things that we struggle with mightily in this industry is staff churn and burnout,
Yes,
right? I mean, it's inevitable given the way we have to work and given the fractured systems often that nonprofit organizations have either at the enterprise level or even at the tiniest levels, because we have been woefully under resourced to be able to innovate and purchase, the latest and greatest tools, unlike a Nike or a Coca-Cola or a Unilever, for the sake of argument. And I think that as we consider the deployment of AI in our work, and as this technology, should I say nascent, or is it, and from my perspective, is moving very quickly, but is also, you know, Saks Fifth Avenue or Unilever or these giant for-profit enterprises have enormous technology teams, and they can purchase something, test it internally, and then just simply roll it out, whether it's AI or any other platform or technology that they're using. We don't have that same luxury. So I feel like it's incumbent upon us as an industry to really identify a pain point. What is it that we struggle with? And then how might this particular technology exist in service of that? So, by way of example, back to the churn and the staff churn. So, imagine for a moment that you have 12 regional gift officers distributed across the country, or 12 regional gift officers distributed across your metro area. And 4 of them resign within 6 months of each other because they got a better title, a better salary, or something else elsewhere, or whatever the case may be. The actual practice of having to rebalance those portfolios to not miss opportunities to engage those supporters of your organization is real. It can take, the actual going into your CRM and saying, instead of Sterrin, it's going to be Anne that goes and talks to Mr. and Mrs. Jones. We can already use AI and or agents to do that work for us if we have that data set and the governance in place to do it. And that is such a safer way to play with the automation piece, because then what we're doing is, instead of saying, I'm going to have a bot solicit a donor, which I will tell you, I am 150% against that part of it. I'm, sorry for those of you who thinks that's the future, but I don't. I think this is human. But what if we turned it inside and we said, you know what? These agents and this AI is going to exist in service of empowering our staff to be their best selves, to play to the best donors and connect with the people who are warmest on the file right now in real time. So that even if you lose 2 or 3 fundraisers, you can rebalance a portfolio without having to manually do it, without file boxes and rulers. And then as you mature that model, as the case may be, and the data and the information about the people you have in your closed system is rich.
Yeah.
Actually, imagine, think about, I used to wait weeks for research reports on what were my donors doing with us? How were they interacting? Were they volunteering? Well, presumably we are capturing all of that information. And that's where AI and the agents become an assistant to your human fundraiser to help them know that Mr. and Mrs. Jones were just at the event last night. They have been interacting with this content or that content on our website. And they have given this amount of money for the last 3 years, and that we train those models to rescore and reprioritize our files. And I think that that is the most optimal place for us as an industry to start. It's safer. It is not putting our data out into the universe. It's controlling what the data we already have that's protected and private. And it's empowering those fundraisers. And it helps us as fundraising leaders manage staff change and churn. Because if
Yep.
we remind ourselves, and I had a funny conversation about this just last night, that the relationships that these donors have are with the organization, not with the fundraiser. And that's always been a rub, well, we really liked Susie Q because she was our gift officer. Well, that's great, but we really need you to like Duke University. That's
Yep.
that's the affiliation. This tool can help us facilitate that in a seamless way. So
Yes.
it doesn't matter which gift officer it is. What matters is that gift officer is informed and can show up authentically, know the truth and the history with this donor, and continue that relationship with the institution.
I love what you're pointing out, and I think it's a perfect example of how when you take a look at how this technology can intervene somewhere in the cycle, and you look at the possibility that the technology that exists right now is not actually empowering the frontline fundraisers. And that's part of the reason why we're trolling around looking for all these other ways to engage our donors and do it faster and better on, with automations or autonomous or whatever degree of technology you want to layer on it. We've been kind of covering up for something, which is that the current technology, the CRMs, are not optimized for the development officer. They're
Nope.
optimized for everyone but the development officer. And that's why it's like double-edged sword. It's awesome that when a DO starts using generative AI, all of a sudden it's like this whole new world. It's because they've been so underserved for so long, so
Right.
unsupported with the technology that exists. It wouldn't be the level up that it is if it weren't for the fact that we've been so hungry and so desperate for so long to have some type of, um, y yeah, built-in support that doesn't include a ruler and our file boxes in the back, which sadly but truly, until a couple years ago, we were just doing an extension of that. Like, all the Post-it notes, the Excel spreadsheets, the things, the
Absolutely.
Outlook,
The
the inbox,
clipboards. I mean,
the
I
clipboard.
I'd print a list
How
on
many
July 5th,
notebooks?
and yeah, it's ridiculous. But the other thing to that I think is part of the puzzle here that I think we as an industry and certainly as fundraising leaders need to think about. Back to my comment about flipping the script and saying what
Yeah.
we need and not being told what we need. I
Yes.
think we are at an opportunity right now with all of our CRMs to redefine what those fields, what must we be capturing, what should we be capturing, and what, might we capture if we really needed it. And if we can simplify the data capture and get our frontline fundraisers to say, these are the 5 things you got to enter after a visit. That's it. It's just 5 things. That's what's going to feed the data model to then help us use this technology to make our work more productive and more seamless. Full stop.
Yeah.
So I am one of the projects I'm going to be leading over the course of the next few months is just that. Like, how do we redefine what is it that we actually need out of a CRM and not over engineer it? What do we really need out of the box, and how easy could this be so that the CRM is, because that's the lifeblood, as it's data governance and data management. It's the information
Yep.
that's in the CRM that feeds the agents and feeds those tools in order to help us. So we have
Right.
to get that right. And all of us as fundraisers have to recommit to that. So I have recommitted to that. And I think this, Anne, that I host a Chief Development Officer Council that I convene about 4 or 5 times a year. And that's a project we're going to take on. It's like, this is actually what we need out of our CRM. And then this is how it will feed these new tools that we have so that we can actually use them and not,
Right.
and God forbid we start using generative AI to create major gift proposals before we've actually figured out what the data is in the system. I used an example by way of this is, I worked in 2 different really monstrous universities as a gift officer. And the different CRMs that exist in the different schools, whether it's the medical school, the athletics department, whatever the case may be. I can remember walking across campus and taking like a month to track down my colleagues in the other departments to find out what said donor had done in athletics so that I could do the stewardship report. Again, flip it internally. Let all of that information live in your CRM. Then that's where you let AI create your first draft, and then you personalize it, but it's internal. It doesn't go to the donor without, it culls it. It creates you your first draft, and then you're able to do a stewardship report in minutes as opposed to weeks.
Right. Exactly. So, perfect example would be you can have all of the systems in place that you want to produce just banger stewardship reports. But if the financial, if whatever all the ridiculous names, all the different CRMs have throughout a university, there's usually probably 8 of them, right? If they're not talking to each other. So if it is not possible to get any information on how the gift was actually allocated, then
Right.
it doesn't matter what whiz-bang technology you have to write a super dope stewardship report, because if you don't have the data put
No.
in there about what. So while we're like focusing on all this outward stuff between the relationship with the donor and us, I'm like, how about some of these things that have been broken forever? Let's
Yeah.
turn our attention to that. How as human beings does it work when there's one super passionate program director who has the information about the incredible impact of this philanthropy, and it's in their head, and
Yeah.
they're burnt out and we're burnt out, and we've been on each other's nerves for the past 3 years, and we're both
Yeah.
ready to quit. We're both in
Yeah.
Evan and Michelle's um study, and we're both saying, in the next 2 years we want to leave our jobs, and we're holding all this information in our brain. How can we make some of those things work better using this technology?
Well, that's why I'm committing to reimagining what are the must-haves in the CRM and making it easier. You know,
Yes.
I mean, let's face it. And by the way, I think, this is again where the automation can be very interesting, because what if it were just like you couldn't close the form or close the record until those 5 things were answered?
Yes. Oh
And
my
then
God.
it could be a drop down menu. It doesn't even have to be brain surgery, And so the question becomes like, what are the must haves in a CRM that feed the AI that the AI that would be in service of
Right.
fundraising, not the other way around. Like, oh, here's what Home Depot's doing, and here's no. I don't care what Home Depot is doing. What I care is I want to empower these fundraisers to have the best information they have and I'll take it a step further. I have a 18-year-old son. My son Tommy would no more lick envelopes in a basement or carry around file box in the trunk of his car and do the job I did for 30 years than the man on the moon. And if we don't figure this out to empower the fundraisers of the future, There won't be
There
many
won't
of
be
them.
any,
And
right?
so that's why this is my like passion project for the next
Awesome.
few months, is to be like, this is what we got to figure out so that we can get the adoption and the utilization of the CRM to where it needs to be to feed the AI. It's like,
There is,
that's how I think about it anyhow.
I
So,
agree. There is, I don't have a single one more conversation about donor retention unless we're truly dealing with fundraiser retention, because it will not matter how our donors want to be treated if we
right.
don't have staff. That to me is a bigger crisis, and one that I think is so much more multifactorial. It's
Yeah.
pretty complicated. It's a lot of stuff, but I like, what you're choosing here is like something that's very, very concrete. I've always said, like, if I never see another contact report that says had lunch, if
Oh
I
my
never
God.
see that ever again, it will be too soon.
Yeah.
It's like, don't and I just like everybody else, like sitting down and writing a contact report for some people is a double black diamond task.
Yeah.
Okay, how do we make that easier?
Oh, I'll
Right?
tell
How
you.
do we still
I'll,
Yeah,
I'll let a secret out on LinkedIn right now, and God help, the fact that I'm saying this out loud, but I'll admit it. I have been the development officer that has gone entire jobs without logging into the CRM because it was too hard to use.
I
And
love this.
I would get a printed list the first week
I
of
love
July,
this.
and it would sit on my desk and it was static. And I would that's what I use. And once I was through it, the jig was up. But by the time, because, back then, again, back to the old lady comment,
Yeah,
I couldn't log into it remotely. I
right.
certainly didn't have it on my phone.
No,
There was no way that was going to happen. And I'd get back to the office and I'd be like, oh, I'm just, they're still going to stay in my portfolio. It doesn't matter if I enter it. Well, guess what? Now, 10 years later, were it that we had established that baseline framework, and that's the thing that we are not given the luxury of doing, is informing that. Like, what is the basics that we
yeah,
need and actually to feed this model? So that's why we got to start with the basic piece of it. It's the data
yes.
and data governance. And it's like, what is actually the data that we need? Like, I don't
Yep,
need, do you need to capture hair color? Maybe not. Yes, of course, you need to have a place to write a narrative, but it shouldn't have to be a minimum of 500 words or a minimum of 1,000 words because they don't have time. They're moving on to the next.
no. There's only like 5 things, in my
Right.
opinion, that we must know, and in the absence of that, keep it. If I don't know, if no one ever has determined whether this person is actually philanthropic, I'm not going to be part of sending the president back to the living room again. Right?
Right.
No one has ever made any determination, or what assets are they using to fund
Yeah.
their gift. You go through like 40 contact reports because we're just making it up as we go along, right? And the technology never was there to guide us. It was sort of just an information sucking hole.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's always caused static, at least in the university side, is that information we feed the monster, but we don't get any information back out of the monster, right?
So
So
then
to
why
your
bother? That was my
why
attitude
bother?
as a 27-year-old fundraiser. Like, I can't be bothered with this. I'm going to put it all in there. They're not using it for, what are we using it
What are
for?
we using it for?
And now we know what we can use it for. I also would argue that there's an entire opportunity here for us to take the old lady brains that we have and all the history and marry it to the youth and the energy around this technology
Oh,
and build
million
it
percent.
together, because that's how we build something that's sustainable for the future. Because
Yes.
there's lots of lessons learned that we've all had. I mean, I have stories of flying into a city with 6 appointments scheduled, 5 of them cancel, calling back to the, development operations office, and they told me it'd take 2 weeks to get a new list of who was in that region. So I sat there for 2 days and made one visit. Like,
Yep.
that doesn't need to be the case anymore. These things can be refreshed, and it enables collaboration, particularly again if it's internally facing. It enables
Right.
me to know, oh, that, Becky has been talking to this person over here in athletics, and I'm here for the cancer center. Perhaps, I could just give Becky a call or Slack Becky and say, hey, what's going on with this? I've got time. My appointment
Yep.
canceled. Do you want me to swing by and, drop some swag off and just say thanks for your support?
Right.
And then, but it also, and I'm also opening Pandora's box here. The other thing that this will do for us, back to your comment earlier about a moment to examine and to innovate, I also think we need to reimagine how we incentivize and remunerate and evaluate fundraisers to encourage more collaboration.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
there are a few organizations I know of that are doing this really quite well and really digging into this in a way where it's a spirit of philanthropy and a notion of teamwork, as opposed to, this is my portfolio, and if I don't hit my number, I'm out of luck. And I think we are, because it's a balance of art and science, and because numbers don't lie, when we lean hard into metrics absent the other piece, the metrics and the measurement starts to feel punitive and onerous to the people working with and for us. And then there's a visceral negative reaction to it. So how do we how do we decide what to measure? How do we talk about why we're measuring it? And then encourage everybody to understand their piece of that, so that they have a sense of ownership of it, a sense of pride in participation, and a sense of all boats rising. That's how you change the frame of, it's my relationship with Sterrin as opposed to my relationship with Duke
Yes.
as
Yep.
an institution. And I just think we have a moment here with all that's at our disposal and with all of the people committed to this work to really stand together and say, this is what we need, this is why we need it, and help us build it. And humanity's depending on it. I mean, I don't mean to be existential about this, but I think people woefully underestimate how much of our communities are being held up by these nonprofit organizations, great and small, and we cannot afford for them to not be able to continue and to be sustainable.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. So many different things. So I want to ask you a question. We're going to like pause from serious stuff for a second.
Okay.
I want to ask you, what's something about yourself that you don't ever get to brag about?
Oh my gosh. What is something I don't get to brag about? I try not to brag, ever really, because it makes me really uncomfortable. Because fundraisers are people that work in the background, not in the foreground, even though I've found myself in the foreground, certainly of late. I, um, I'm a really good cook.
Yeah, tell us more about that.
I'm a really good cook, and I am a really good, I think the other thing is I think I'm a really good friend.
Oh, goodness.
And I think actually that's probably the bigger one, is that my love language is definitely acts of service. And my very dear friend that I work with at Attain, Christy Phillips, reflected that back to me yesterday after watching me in action at Dreamforce. And I think I'm a really good friend. I'm very loyal. I show up for the people that I love,
Yeah.
without expectation. Maybe that's an extension of my life in philanthropy. But I love fierce, and I don't let go. And I will stand by the people that need me. And even when they don't think they need me, I'm still there.
Yeah. That's really good stuff. There's like few better qualities than being a good friend.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
absolutely. When we were in our pre-show conversation, I was sharing with you that we talk a lot about the role of empathy in philanthropy and in the AI revolution. And it's actually yesterday I was having a conversation with Nathan Chappelle, a mutual friend
Yep.
of ours. We're doing a talk at the International Fundraising Congress in October in the
Oh, in
Netherlands.
Amsterdam.
And
Oh, with Willika, my friend Willika. I love it.
yeah,
IFC
yeah.
is the best conference. Enjoy every minute.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I need to talk to you about everything because I have no idea
Yeah,
what to
it's
expect.
amazing.
So we were talking about empathy in the context of we're going to have a conversation about will AI take over your development team? And of course we'll dabble in the territory of the conversations about autonomous fundraisers. And one of the things that's really been on my mind is empathy and burnout,
Mhm.
and how in our industry meaning in the nonprofit industry, in the philanthropy realm, that our jobs inherently require a whole different reservoir of empathy. I almost feel like I've never had to, it's strange, but I feel like I've got an empathy budget that I can allocate to
Mm.
my work life. My empathy, like love, is expansive. There's lots of it. There's more of it than I can possibly know. But when it comes to my job,
Mhm.
as I became a mom myself, as I have other people I have to take care of, right? As I have more and more people that depend on me, I was thoughtful about how much of myself, how much of my, like sensitive, open, walking wound of a human being that am I able to give to, for example, my donors? And I did feel like our industry tends to assume that we all have unlimited amount of empathy to devote to our jobs. And so, as we were talking yesterday about the role of some level of automation and autonomy and with AI and fundraising, one of the thoughts that I had is there a way that some of this technology can be used to take the empathy that we naturally have and maybe extend it, expand it, require less of the human beings because we all have lives outside of our jobs.
Mhm.
It's sticky territory though, right?
Yeah.
We aren't going to walk around saying that AI has empathy, but we do know that people can feel heard. They can feel heard by an autonomous thingamajig, which is not the same thing as being empathized with. But you know, what do you think about what do you think about the role of AI, empathy, and working with donors?
So I would come back to AI is a tool that we are responsible for training. So if that is my baseline as Sterrin, um, I I don't know the answer to this question, but here's just like spitballing this is I think it is incumbent upon us to train the tool and the autonomous, um, let's call her Birdie. That let's say that I have an autonomous birdie that's my, my other.
Yes.
It's incumbent upon me to train that tool to be as close to me and as close to my authentic level of service or the way I show up. And it also needs to know where it needs to stop and engage
Yes.
me as a real person.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure yet. And because I know enough about technology to be dangerous, but I'm certainly no Nathan.
Yeah.
So how do we put the scaffolding around it in a way where it helps stare and scale? Birdie helps stare and scale, but Birdie also knows based on how it's been trained and based on how it interacts, whether it's keywords or certain situations, to escalate it to a human being.
Yep.
And I think, while I'm not 100, and if I can feel it, how do I articulate the feeling when I know I have to pivot or dig deeper? How do I train something that is not human? Because what's unique about us as people is we feel.
Yes.
I'm not
Yeah.
entirely convinced we can train an AI, we can train Birdie to actually feel, even though people
Uh-huh.
purport that we can. But
Uh-huh.
so, how do we train it to know when becoming it's becoming a feeling issue and a
Yes.
heartfelt issue so that we're not just doing it to solicit at scale, that
Yes.
we're inviting deeper engagement. What are those prompts, and what is that we can bake into the system in order for it to elevate that? Because I think, for the sake of argument, I used to have a portfolio that's 150 people. What if my portfolio became 1,500 because I had Birdie? Right.
Right.
And how do I interact with Birdie in a way where I say, you know what, Birdie, I want you to take a look at my file and look at, the last 50 people that I haven't talked to in 30 days. Here's what I want you to reach out to them about and tell them what I've been up to, and do that in that way. But then how does Birdie know when to escalate it back to me?
Right.
So
I mean,
that's off the top of my head.
well, and like I've gotten myself very deep into situations before realizing, oh, I shouldn't be. This is not,
Yeah.
I crossed my own boundaries. Somebody crossed mine, or all of a sudden the feeling that was like a little glimmer now is like right in front of me, like, oh, I'm not qualified to be having this conversation right now. Right.
Right.
So I'm barely attuned to it as a human being.
Right. So how would we expect and train a machine to be able to do that on our behalf? So I want us, that's the part of me that comes back to, I bet we can, but I'd like to train it on us first.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
want it to respond to what the fundraiser or Sterrin needs,
Yep.
maybe not necessarily what Mr. Rockefeller needs at
Yep.
first,
At
until we get
first.
that down. So, so if I wake up in the morning as a frontline fundraiser and I say, gosh, there's been a hurricane in Houston, and I need to spin up a campaign to support, relief in the Gulf. Birdie, can you go find in the file the last 1,000 people that gave to that campaign that we did the last time a hurricane hit New Orleans, and just give me a stacked ranked, look at who they were, when they gave, what level they gave at, and so that I can then be more, I would like it to do that for us first as a proof of
Mhm.
concept before
Mhm.
we unleash it on those very human and very well-meaning donors that we have to make sure continue to trust us.
Mhm.
Because if at any moment we break trust with one of them over something like this, we would break it with all of them.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I
Mhm.
think more, it is a much more sensitive thing in the case of philanthropy than it would be in the case of selling a car.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's where I want us to continue to be careful and to continue to think about how we do this in service of the work and in service of creating empathy for ourselves. It's hard to do this work. So, give me my reprioritized prospect list every morning with some research and new information, and make
Yes.
my job easier so I'm not as tired. So maybe I can do a little bit more because I'm not digging through file boxes with a ruler.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And you know, this is another one of those examples of like it gives us a reason to rethink actually the role of research and frontline fundraisers and how we work
Right.
together. And I know that we've over the course of decades, right, we've looked at all sorts of different models. And if you just look at university like advancement services and the frontline gift officers, when I've seen it work best is the messy way, where the researchers are part of the team with the
Yep.
major gift officers. We don't like it because it's messy, but guess what? That's how things actually work. That's how when we find out that the extent of the food insecurity that our students were having during COVID, that's how we spun up those lists like you're talking about, right?
Right.
We gift officers don't have all the skills to pull all that data in a really refined way from the database, nor do we have time for a 2-week report.
Right.
We have a researcher who is a human being who we can iterate with and think creatively and use the data to help us solve a problem. Maybe even just rethinking that relationship is a first step to even putting the tools in the hands of the gift officers,
Well, I
right?
mean, think about how many of us have been paying for donor research for how long?
Mhm.
And often you have to provide said research company with the donor gift information for them to populate and give it right back to
Send
you.
back to you.
this sort of eliminates that middle situation and makes it much, much faster. I think the interesting piece about that is, so again, if it's internal and the integrity of the data is good, you
Yep.
are able to unleash the machine learning over your closed data set, and then to create a way where you can also then safely send the research out into Google and all those other places. That's really where a lot of those research firms are finding this stuff, right? So, and then pull the external with the internal, with the privacy and the protections in place. You could be generating research reports in real time constantly. Now, no harm, no foul to my research colleagues. I'm not suggesting that that's not going to necessitate human interaction, because I'll go back to a campaign I did back in 1997, old lady again.
Right.
I would get assigned all of these prospects in this beautiful part of Scottsdale, Arizona, and I might show up, and just because the research report said one thing doesn't mean that the house wasn't, out of furniture, or perhaps someone in that family has cancer and the family's going through a very devastating emotional time. There's not a machine on the planet that can figure that out unless you
Right.
show up. So
Right.
so it's like, how do we create more fluid and more effective productivity? And then at the same time, to empower the human to find out that part, which says, you know what? No, we're going to reprioritize this. And I have the final say of how and where we interact with this person as a person,
Ah, yes, I love
you know?
this.
Yeah.
So what about so we've been talking about how these tools could be used to better use the excellent, and by the way, very expensive in many cases, data that we have. Like the bringing a data point from someone's living room into our database is a very expensive proposition. And it's there and it's in our CRM, but it might as well be in Timbuktu because I
Right.
don't know how to get it out. So on an individual level, you can definitely see how we could oh gosh, Rachel, that's a really good point. Um, how the individual use could it could empower us to do fundraising differently and better in a way that might contribute less to burnout and more to longevity. What about at the enterprise level? What does this look like when the whole organization starts using technology in a way that is optimized for the people who work there?
Well, I'll tell you, I spent a good portion of my career as a fundraising consultant doing feasibility studies and assessing files. When we used to, back in the day, pull the file out, analyze it, do all the things, and then try to push the file back into the CRM. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't work. All the things. One of the most interesting conversations I've had really in the last 2 years was with an enterprise level, a national huge organization with a donor file of, I think it exceeded 15 or 16 million records.
Wow.
And when you do, and these are the kinds of organizations that walk towards comprehensive campaigns of 5, 6, $7 billion, right, over a 3 to 5 year period. And invariably, and I gave a talk about this actually at the Giving Institute about 18 months ago to a room full of fundraising consultants. And I'm sure I was not very popular. Good thing many of them were my friends. But often, you know, we will come back to an organization and say, we've analyzed your file and you have 110,000 people on your file who are capable of making a gift of $100,000 or more. So you're sitting on top of $250 million of untapped potential. So we think you can do a campaign of $5 billion. Well, that's fantastic, except how in the name of God is an organization with 15 gift officers or 30 gift officers, even nationally, going to begin to approach accessing any of that potential, even if it's true? And I say that with
Right.
a smirk on my face. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So the answer is actually automation, right? So
Yes.
the answer is, if that's true, how do we ruthlessly and radically prioritize those 110,000 people to 15,000 or to 1,500 of the best? And that
Yes.
is through a combination of the data points, the relative research of capacity, all the things, but we now have access to behavioral health, behavioral
Yes.
information. Like we have what used to be, RFM is now thousands of data points that we can have access to that would help us prioritize that and then create the automation to drip feed to those gift officers the
Yes.
best of that portion of the file over time. And you can measure it and then measure the yield in real time and actually qualify whether or not that hypothesis about the 250 million bucks was real,
Right.
and you can activate on it. So that's
Yes.
where I see that in the future. And I mean, there are two organizations which I won't name that are doing that now. And I'm, riding shotgun with them on that because I believe that is the future, because we have woefully neglected our mid-major portions of our file in
Yep.
service of keeping the top end the same.
Yep.
But they're gonna age out, they're gonna
Yep.
go away, and we have to fill the bottom of the funnel. And that's where the automation and the machine learning comes into play. And it can be done. But again, it can't just be smacked onto it like a solution. You really have to think through what's the problem, and then do we have the governance and the data and the data points in place to actually be able to leverage it. And
Right.
that's actually, I would argue, that's the hardest work that we as an industry have to do right now, is to optimize our data sets and our governance in order
Mm.
to be able to leverage this. And
Yes.
you can do it this is not just, by the way, for the enterprise folks. You can do it all the way down market as
Yep.
well, to a tiny organization with $1 million or $2 million budget. But it's just about, I think it's about starting small and testing. So back in the day when we used to A/B test all the things with our direct mail, I think that's a way to do it. I also would say, I mean, could be a whole other podcast. I think there's some very interesting innovations um, around segmentation that will empower um, certainly any organization, and particularly smaller to
Mm.
mid-sized nonprofit organizations, to gain control of their data around their direct mail.
Mm.
So, and we could have a whole other session on that, but what's going to have to happen is we're going to have to build internal capacity, because we've been sending our data out and all of that to people to analyze, to segment for us, and then to mail forever. And it's been like, oh yeah, it cost me, eight or $10 million to do that. And it's nice because it raises me 15 or 16. It's like money that you just don't consider. But what if we actually had control of that data too? And we were
Mm.
able to handle the segmentation in-house and actually use the machine learning to then push people out of the mail into portfolio in real time.
Mm. Well,
That's,
that would,
I mean, that it can happen.
so lots and lots and lots of ways to use AI in service of getting the job done, but also doing it better with a little bit of a lighter footprint on the on ourselves, really.
Well, and
We
it's just going to make us, it's like, I hate that expression, work smarter. But
Yeah.
I think actually the burnout and the retention problems can be served with this, because the work becomes easier. Not
Yes.
It's still hard I mean, fundraising's not for everybody. Not everybody wants to sit in front of someone and do the eye to eye thing. That's fine, but there is a place for all of this innovation to sit in service of the humans doing it. I mean, that's what it's for. Full
Yes.
stop.
Okay, two quick things where we have just a couple minutes. Give me a little bit of a glimpse into life as an executive, nonprofit executive in residence. And also tell us where we can find more and find out about your CDO retreats, etc.
Okay, so the nonprofit executive in residence is the next generation of my industry advisor role that I held at Salesforce for 4 years. The functional difference is that Attain Partners has embraced me and my crazy brain and all of my years of experience, and has seen the wisdom of having a practitioner and a known quantity and someone who's willing to be radically honest be a part of the team in a way that is informative, not only for the Attain team, but also creates a sense of safety and accountability both on both sides of that equation, so that I act sort of like the intermediary, but I'm also informing strategy both for Attain as well as for the nonprofit organizations, and really
Nice.
teasing through it's not a sales role. It's an ally role is how I would describe it. And the reason I chose Attain, and I told the chairman this last night over dinner, is because Attain sees that we can no longer approach our industry the same way we've been approaching this industry around innovation and around helping them thrive and expect a different outcome. It's time to do this differently. And I am that disruptor, as you said from the outset. So that's my role at Attain. You can find out more about Attain Partners on the Attain Partners website, attainpartners.com. And in addition, the next CDO Council is October 17th. It is a global convening. We're doing a portion of it in person in Philadelphia, and the rest of it will be virtual because we have fundraisers from all over the world joining us. We have a speaker from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, someone from UNICEF, as well as from SAVE. And the information about that is also on the Attain Partners website. It will also be all over LinkedIn. Invitations are open. The more the merrier, because the more of us that stand up and rise and say, this is what we need, that we will get it. And I will also say this about the CDO Council. The rule of this when I started it back in COVID was no slides, no selling, and no recording. So it is safe space to access peer learning in a way that everyone can ask these kinds of questions of people who are doing it in the trenches. They are us. It is us doing this. So that's what the CDO Council is. So it's all
Awesome.
over the Attain Partners website.
Awesome.
And it's free.
So yeah, people run, don't walk. Like this is what people have been asking for. They want community, they want togetherness, they want to know that they're in a safe space with people who understand what they're going through, and they can ask real questions and get real answers without fear that there's somehow going to be retribution for saying something that's true that other people don't want to hear.
And I'm famous for speaking. I'll tell you this. When I graduated from high school, my superlative was most likely to speak out of turn. So it's apropos of nothing. You can just say that's what I'm doing now in the entire industry.
Perfect for all of us. Sterrin, thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
being here. I am so happy about our budding relationship. Now you're
Likewise.
stuck with me and I'm stuck with you because we're both loyal friends. So that's that.
Yes. I love it. Well, thank you for having me. Thanks everybody for being out
Absolutely.
there,
Thank you,
and
everybody.
hope to see you
And
soon.
get in touch with Sterrin. She's your people. She's your community.
Yay.
Thanks, everybody. Talk to you
Thanks,
soon.
gang.
Bye.